Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 0045 of Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets. And today we are so pleased to have Nicole McMillan. Nicole is a First Nations woman from Australia. She's an entrepreneur and a business owner with 20 years experience in the community service sector. Her passion is working with Aboriginal children and their families. She has a deep connection with her family and her community. She has developed a webinar based upon cultivating dignity, which was born out of her life experience growing up in remote Australia and her experiences of transitioning from an employee to a business owner. And it's this transformational journey that she wants everyone to realize that it's all about becoming the best version of yourself. She has a unique perspective. She looks at the world with unique eyes, and she's really quite a pleasure and a joy to know. And I do have a previous acquaintance with her as we share a same mastermind group together. So, Nicole, welcome to Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful and honored.
I'm grateful too. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen the video on YouTube, you need to just put it into YouTube and put in $50 block land. She owns the cheapest piece of land in New South Wales, Australia. Watch the 6-minute video. It will just be really quite an eye-opener and an amazing video. So you can meet her even more. She's just great. You know, Nicole, you're an online entrepreneur. And it's the truth to the fact you haven't always been one. So what do you wish you had known before you began your journey as an online entrepreneur?
I wish I had known that this was possible and that I had started years ago. It's been mind-blowing. I didn't realize I had the capability to be able to do the technical stuff and learn everything that I have and bring it all together. So I think it's just amazing because, as you pointed out before, we're in a mastermind together. And Trish, who is amazing and coaches us, she actually saw it in me when I met her in person one day and said, we need to connect. And she invited me along, and wow, I had no idea that I was capable. So I think anyone is capable if you've got the right information and people and tools at your fingertips.
I think the golden nuggets that you just already shared are going to be resounding in people's minds. Because the truth of the matter is, it's a collaborative world now. It's not so much competition. It's about who you can collaborate with, that you can get that little edge, more knowledge than what you already have. And then you begin to employ that for yourself. And you're right. It's the world. I mean, Gary Jenkins did not own a social media account 1 year ago. I wasn't on Facebook. I had never been. No idea what to do. I only knew how to turn on my computer and call IT, and that was it. And now look at this. I'm running a podcast. So it's a growing thing. It welcomes everybody, but you got to have the right mindset and the right attitude about being here and be willing to be authentic. And that is one of the great gifts you bring to the world. I really have to admire you for that. So, Nicole, not everything has worked out well. You know, we make these plans and sometimes they just don't come to fruition. What was perhaps one of the greater challenges that you've come across that didn't work out well? And what did you learn from it?
I think with my series, Cultivating Dignity, I have 3 topics, and the first one is connection. And what actually happened when I was developing that, my own connections to my family and my own history kind of sidetracked me from releasing the series when I wanted to over 12 months ago. I have been through such a deeper process now. So in a way, yes, I've been sidetracked, but at the same time, I have so much more to offer and to give now. And that's actually one of the most important things about what I'm doing is that authenticity and being true to who I am. And just really consolidating and being able to share that with other people in a really meaningful way. And I could have done that before, but it's a whole new level now.
I like how you
So,
say a whole new level, because when we run against a wall, and there are all kinds of walls, mental, physical, technological, but whenever we run across those walls, there's always something to learn, always that silver lining that Napoleon Hill's always talking about. There's silver to find in these gray clouds, and they're all there. It's always there. So
and like Ralph Waldo Emerson says, every wall.
absolutely. Absolutely. And like Maria von Trapp says, whenever the door's closed, there's always a window. So you
Exactly.
can get into the room if you want. There's always a way.
Exactly.
And it's all about attitude and your willingness. So here you are. You're in Australia. You're
Hmm.
you are working as a First Nations woman
Hmm.
in a world that you have been in both worlds. I mean, you've had a
Hmm.
foot in the common ordinary everyday what everybody thinks of Australia, and then you're in the world that's what most people say, well, that's like not Australia. I mean, it's kind of like, oh, we get to see that piece of Australia in the movie Australia, but that's not really Australia. But you're in both worlds. So what's
Hmm.
that like? What's that like for you as an individual, bridging both worlds and yet being a meeting place?
That's a really interesting question. I love that you've brought that up because I do have fair skin. I do have, and as a result of that, I have privilege that other family members and people I know don't have. And I am committed to using the privilege that I am afforded because I can walk in both worlds to benefit my community and to do the best I can, especially for our kids that are still being taken. And I'm just so grateful. Like, I cannot tell you the value of growing up in community like I did in a little town in the far west of New South Wales that has the most amazing people, which is Wilcannia. And I cannot even express the value and how privileged I was just to be part of that community, and then to find out further down the track so many people there are my family. So that's been a huge journey, and that's what I was referring to when I was talking about connections and consolidating. So it's been amazing. I'm actually really blessed. And throughout my life, I grew up with a family that was part of the church. My soul and my spirit and my psyche and everything about my inner being doesn't do well in institutions or, that kind of framework. Catapulted out of there. And the same with the government job that I had. I was, things happened that just led me out of it. And in both settings, I've ended up with a sense of freedom that I wouldn't have had without some of the difficult circumstances that came my way. So interesting, interesting stuff.
So with this sense of freedom, you moved on from the employee status to being an
Hmm.
entrepreneur. And I think the thing about being an entrepreneur is if you haven't been one before, it's really kind of a shock to the
Yep.
system to realize that you are now the head of every department. Everything happens has to be you in
Yeah.
that aspect. And so you go through that shock, but tell me about the freedom you're experiencing.
Well, I've realized in recent weeks that I am in another category, which is called digital nomad. And I don't know if you probably know what a digital nomad is. So I work for myself. We have our little van with my husband and my dog, and we travel, and we can go wherever we need to be. The work just keeps coming in, and the financial freedom, the ability to be where we need to be. And anytime I need to reconnect to my family and all of the family that I've recently met and my culture and community, I can go do that because I can work from anywhere. So I can be where I need to be. I can be guided and not told you've got to be here at a certain time, 9 to 5 every day. And if you're not, you need a doctor's certificate. And if you have too many days off, you're not going to be paid. Like, that's just not part of my life anymore.
It's amazing. And, digital nomad, laptop lifestyle, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
it's a reality. It's not that you simply can pull it off overnight. It takes a bit of training, a bit of learning. It is work. You have to do the work
Mm-hmm.
because you have to be based on and focused on that actual income reward that comes from
Mm-hmm.
doing the work. But having that freedom, because really, you literally step into different worlds depending on what you're doing and different cultures, different understandings of how things are supposed to work. And yet you married the two into this business. Now, there's people that have a difficult enough time just doing their own culture and trying to figure out how to pull what's going on in their life together. I think what you've done masterfully is been able to marry the two cultures together in your business to be an advocate for one in the other. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the other, be able to bring its technologies, its understanding, its skills, its funding, whatever, back into the original culture. So you're bridging, you're doing what governments have been trying to do forever poorly, and you're able to bridge that gap and bring it in because you have the understanding and you've
Mm-hmm.
been able to bring that into real focus. Now, I know there's got to be challenges along the way. What kind of challenges do you face with that?
I think the challenges that I face every single day with that is, yes, I no longer work for the government, but I'm still doing work that is required by them. I manage my time, I'm in control of what I'm doing, but there's still expectations that they have of the work that I do. And thankfully for me, the work that I am doing for them is very highly regarded, and I'm being sought after now to do certain jobs from that cultural perspective, because as we've talked about, people in that world don't understand what goes on in the cultural sense. And I am bridging a gap. And I think the challenge is when I'm meeting with people who have had a hard time at the hands of government and decisions, and I'm independent, but I'm still seeing injustice, it's kind of like I'm advocating, but I'm also meeting government requirements. And it's a bit of a juggle, but it's working. And that's what matters. And it's making a difference to the children in each family.
And I think that's the benefit of being an entrepreneur, because when
Mm.
you are an employee, like a government employee, you have their box you can work within. If you're working, being North American and being of Hopi descent, I think of tribal aspects
Mm.
we have. It's like the two cultures are clashing all the time. They don't speak the
Mm-hmm.
same language. They don't have the same understanding. In fact, they don't even have the same view of reality oftentimes. But where you are able to be flexible on both ends, I think people out there in the world who are thinking like, well, maybe I could do something like that, really need to understand that flexibility is a gift that they're actually bringing into the formula of
Mm-hmm.
what their business can do, bridging the gap. I mean, it's like if you wanted to put this into a monetary sense, it's Forex trading. I'm taking one currency and figuring out the value of another and pairing the two together to see how we can make this thing work. So people on both sides are spending the money and making this thing work. You're actually doing something that is phenomenal in of itself. But I don't want to stick with this brick and mortar, programmatic way. Tell me about, as an entrepreneur, has there been like a spiritual growth? Has there been a spiritual component along this? And can you share that with us?
Absolutely. I wouldn't even be here without the spiritual aspect of myself and the way I move through life. And I have been guided every single step of the way through circumstances, through nature, through going home and spending time out in my community. And without that inner knowledge of, it's ancestral knowledge, it is ancestral knowledge. And we all have connections in our various cultures to our ancestors. And if we can draw on that along with our own intelligence and what we learn in this life through whatever education or experience, bringing that all together, it actually takes you to a higher level of functioning and ability, and you can achieve things that you may never have dreamt of. And that's what I find truly amazing. Sometimes I get to the point where I think maybe I'm just totally off track and I'm backing myself and thinking, is this going to work? And then I'll get a sign and I keep going, and then wow, I can't even explain how amazing that is. And it sounds a bit crazy, but it's like intuition, but on a deeper level.
I like what Napoleon Hill writes in his book, Outwitting the Devil. He has a deposition where he's actually questioning the devil in like a divine court. One of the things that the devil does say is, if people only knew how close they are to winning, they would never quit, because it's usually one or two more steps and you win. But because they get so discouraged, because they are compounding a failure, or they start to put their ego on the line, they walk away because they're worried what other people will say now. And I never really thought of business as a spiritual venture. I never thought of coming online that this would
We're
be
not
like,
taught that.
yeah,
We're not taught that.
yeah. But I will tell you, you walk by faith as an entrepreneur constantly. And sometimes it's just dark. If you just wait a moment, the light will appear and you'll know the next step to take. And they don't teach that in business school. I've never read a single business book that said that. Never once. But when I get into success literature, I see it all the time. So
That's so true.
yeah. So, maybe we're not looking in the right places sometimes, but the only way you're going to fail in this thing is if you just stop.
If you stop. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things I just love when I listen to you in our mastermind groups, when you start to share things, because it's all coming from your heart. I'm sure there are people who are listening to this. They're sitting there saying, she is so cool. I vibrate with her. How do I get in contact with her? Now I'm going to put this information in the show notes. So what's the best way for people to contact you?
So I have my website, which is nicolemcmillan.com.au. Look up $50 block of land on YouTube. It comes up in the top search results. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. So yeah, thank you.
Well, it's really good that people can get in contact with you. Now, usually I give people just 2 minutes, but I'm going to let you take whatever you want. Just tell us what's on your heart. The time is yours.
When you said before, people just stop. And when you stop, things don't happen for you. And one of my business names is actually Emu Heart. Now, I don't know if you know much about emus. They're an Australian bird. They look like an ostrich, but they actually can't go backwards. They can only move forward. And that has been one of the keys to my success, is about moving forward regardless of what's going on, chipping away, taking steps. And even though things feel like they're never going to come to fruition, just keep going. And I have used that throughout my life, even as a young child, and it works. It actually works. And then when you couple that with your authenticity, knowing who you are, your ancestral knowledge, your experiences, and your passion, you combine all of that together, and you become who you were put on this earth to be. And my series, Cultivating Dignity, is about teaching and helping and supporting others to do that, because sometimes we'll go through a significant traumatic event that could sideswipe us. And I have been through that several times in my life, and I have learned how to adapt and overcome it. And it's amazing.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Nicole McMillan, a First Nations woman from Australia, has just unloaded 2 shiploads of gold nuggets in just that last 2 minutes. It's just unbelievable. If you want to follow the clues for success, they were all through this broadcast. Nicole, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this broadcast, please subscribe. If you haven't done so, share it with somebody that you know would benefit from it. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you've subscribed and you've double-clicked that bell so that it's going to let you know every time I upload something new. We go for 3 podcasts every week to be released for your benefit and your pleasure, because we know that success always leaves clues. Thank you, Nicole, so much for being here today. God bless you.
And bless you too. The pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Say goodbye to Nicole. She'll be back, I'm sure, at some point. See you later. Bye.